Welcome to the PIO Podcast, a forum for all things public information related for police, fire, EMS, and local government. A place to grow and develop your public information skills. I am your host, Robert Tornaveni. I have over 11 years of experience as a PIO and 27 years as a law enforcement officer. I am proud to announce that we have partnered with the PIO Toolkit to expand and grow the podcast. Thank you to Christine Townsend and Law Publications for this amazing opportunity. To contact the show, email robert@piotoolkit.com. We need your feedback on how we're doing. Please rate us on whatever platform you listen or send us a review via email. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified of the latest episodes. Thank you for listening. Sit back and enjoy the next episode. Welcome to the PIO podcast, Chelsea Kretz, who is a Media Supervisor for Parkland Hospital. Chelsea is the former Public Information Officer of the Grande Prairie Police Department, and you are also on the board of the North Texas Public Information Officers Group. Welcome aboard, Chelsea.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So I saw on your background, you were a news producer and digital contributor for Fox 4 in Dallas in Fort Worth. So as a recovering journalist, how did you make the transition originally to the public sector?
You know, I've been blessed to be able to do so many different things in the world of communications and, news distribution. I had a great time at Fox 4. I learned a lot. I was surrounded by incredibly intelligent colleagues, both inside the newsroom and those that were in the field. You get to a point in your career where you kind of just start looking around and you start asking yourself, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? Fun fact, I actually wanted to be Erin Andrews. I wanted to be a sports reporter.
Okay.
So I studied sports journalism at the University of North Texas in Denton, which for those who aren't familiar with the area in North Texas, it's the furthest north of what's considered North Texas in our Metroplex. But it's a great journalism school, and there's a ton of, mean green folks who were in the Metroplex. So that's what I wanted to do. And then the first job I got was at a smaller TV station. So I worked overnight news. So I was the morning news producer. I was pretty much a zombie. I worked, 10 at night to 7 in the morning, 5 nights a week, which of course, when I went into, information officer for law enforcement, I'd always complain to the overnight people, like, how do y'all, like that schedule? And a lot of them said, we love it. That's where a lot of the action is. But then I realized they get a bit of a break during the week. It's not so monotonous where it's, 5 nights in a row. So that really did a number on me. So I only did that for a year and a half. And then I was able to come back home to the Dallas area and work at Fox 4. And I worked there for several years. And I was able to help out the sports department. And so that kind of fulfilled, that drive that I still had for sports. But I just got to a point where I was just kind of ready to see where I could take my skills elsewhere. And so there was a small group of us there that kind of knew we were ready to move on. And so the chief of police for at the time was Steve Dye for the Grande Prairie Police Department. And he knew that he wanted a civilian public information officer with a broadcast background. And whoever fit the bill, great. He had a preference for a woman's perspective, only because at the time there was this idea of having someone behind the camera who maybe didn't have that presence of automatic defense, if that makes sense. Someone in uniform. Not that that's always the case when a PIO who's in uniform is behind the camera, but just due to the environment at that time surrounding law enforcement, he thought, I wonder if perspective would change if the information was coming from a different tone, if you will. So he brought in a colleague of mine, a reporter at the time, and offered the idea to her, and she said, thank you, but no thank you. But my colleague, Chelsea Kretz, I think would be great for that. And she's interested. And so that's what started that relationship. I didn't know that type of position was available at the time. And really it wasn't, it was new. It was kind of a pioneering, if you will, in our Metroplex to have that type of person in the media office at a
Yeah,
police
because usually they were sworn police officers, correct?
Correct. And to that point, my my counterpart at the police department, the chief already had 2 PIOs, and both of them were law enforcement officers. So he was adding a third civilian to the role. So that's how that happened, and it's something that we were able to create. And then as years went on, more police departments, noticed what we were doing, and then North Richland Hills Police Department did the same thing. And so Carissa, she and I were the two. It's funny because both of our initials are CK, so we always called ourselves CK squared. But we were the first to do that. We both served on the board for the North Texas PIO group together, and so it was flattering to be able to help other departments that were going that route as well.
I'm sorry, Chelsea. How big is Grande Prairie as a community?
So there's upwards of 200,000 people.
Okay.
And we're right in the middle of the Metroplex. So to our east is Dallas, to our west is Fort Worth. And years ago, way before, Steve Dye was the chief, it was just a pass-through city. People, no, I want to avoid traffic going this way. Let's go through Grande Prairie. I mean, it wasn't really a place on the map to go visit. And so today when you drive through, I mean, we've got the largest indoor water park in the country. We're building a, city central area where it's a destination point. So it's really, really up and coming. And if you look at our police department, that was built several years ago. And something that I always liked what Chief Dye said is that department, the way that it looks and the services that it offers is really a testament to what the taxpayers and the community feels about us, because they had to agree to help us build that facility. And so that's just speaks to the relationship of how our department is with the community.
And part of that is probably because of your relationship with the community as well as a PIO.
It's cohesive, right? So
Okay.
it's the police department's relationship with city council, city management, all of those combined with the community. It's incredible. It's unlike anything I've ever seen or heard about. Just how involved the mayor is with everything, how involved city management is with everything. The community comes out and to any event that is hosted by either entity. There's a nice cohesion, and it kind of feels like one big family.
Nice. Now, how big is the police department in sworn staff?
Just below 400 sworn staff.
Okay, so a good sized department
Mm-hmm.
in a very good size municipality, right smack dab in between 2 other big cities. So, wow.
And just before I left, to work for the hospital, with recruitment, what it is today in this environment, we were actually seeing several officers either express interest or apply to come to us from other states. So, the word is out that it's a great culture and a great department to work for. And since before I left, our chief, Steve Dye, actually was promoted to city manager. So now, the city has a person who understands law enforcement, who understands community policing, and who understands economic development, and is now, helping lead and grow the city. And then one of our amazing assistant chiefs was promoted to chief of police. So you've got, 2 people leading who understand the city and have been in the city for a very long time. So
Excellent.
they're in good hands.
Excellent. So you made the transition from the public sector to basically private sector, because hospitals are mostly privately owned. They're all privately owned for the most part. So how did your current role working in the hospital change from your role in law enforcement?
So I've been there for a few months, and one of the main things that is obvious is we're bound by HIPAA. So I think one of the main differences is, when you work for a police department as communications, you're able to say a bit more because the investigation is in your hands. Now, of course, there's certain things you aren't allowed to say because it could impede the investigation. And of course, when you express those things to seasoned reporters, if you say something like, hey, yes, this is going on, but if this gets out to the public, that person's going to flee to Mexico. those reporters will be like, all right, got it. Just let me know when I can say something. Right. You know, and then you can kind of deflect and say, even in our news releases, we would say, you know, the victim was taken to an area hospital. We never even would list the hospital in the news release, just to protect, you know, the sanctity of, you know, information like that. So
Right.
now that I'm at a hospital, we can't confirm anything unless we have, you know, written consent from, you know, the victim slash family, you know, just due to HIPAA. So there's not much that we can say in regards to any specific case unless we have consent. So what we do is promote healthcare. You know, our job as communications, you know, for external affairs for the hospital is to promote the idea and promote the health of the community before they even get to the hospital. We want them to be healthy in the community before they even have to come to the hospital to receive care. Now, of course, when you come to the hospital, you receive care, it's going to be quality. But we want to encourage the efforts of, you know, empower the people themselves to stay healthy. So we're pushing out information all the time that's proactive instead of reactive.
Okay, so that role's changed a lot compared to the way it was as a PIO for the police department, where you're basically reacting to everything that occurs. How is the pandemic, and I know you've only been in the role a short time, but how is the pandemic, especially now that we're seeing numbers come back up again with some of the variants, how is the messaging for you guys in that way?
So I'll answer that question first, and then I want to go back to something you said about reactive messaging. So remind me if I
Sure.
lose track. So you're right. I can't speak too much to how the pandemic, because I wasn't at the hospital when that happened. I only know what I've heard. But what I can speak to is that we do have our chief medical officer, Dr. Chang, has been on the forefront of distributing information to the public to let them know what's going on. So he's been a trustworthy person from the hospital that can talk about, you know, COVID, the numbers, what he's seeing in the hospital. He can speak to the morale of, you know, the, you know, frontline workers. And he just encourages, you know, getting the vaccination. And, you know, so he'll often, you know, we'll have media every single day almost, you know, ask, you know, to speak about COVID, and he's our go-to, and he's more than willing to do it. So it's really, really nice to have subject matter experts who can speak on the topic, which I think is another big change from going from a police department to a hospital, is having the subject matter experts speak on the topic. You know, you're not always going to have the detectives that want to be on camera.
Right.
You're not always going to have any of the officers want to be on camera unless some of them understand the benefit that it provides the department for branding purposes. You know, so us as PIOs or as you know, media specialists or media supervisors at the hospital, we're never on camera. And that's something that they made sure I understood before I got hired, that I'll hardly ever be on camera. And I was okay with that because we have our actual providers who are giving the information. So that's something that I would encourage, you know, law enforcement to think about is, you know, people trust the source of information. So, you know, it's not always that the PIO needs to be the one giving the information. And obviously, if there's a crisis situation, you're not going to even see the PIO. The PIO is going to be the one that's coordinating, getting the media there. You're going to have your chief of police on camera because,
Right.
you know, that's the leader of the department, that people need to see, you know, that presence and need to know everything's going to be okay, or everything's not okay. We need to listen to what, you know, he or she has to say. What I will say, going back to the reactive messaging, is so there was an interesting shift whenever Chief Sesney came, you know, was in charge of the police department, and he understood the importance of community engagement and proactive messaging, and also, you know, the traditional reactive messaging. So he actually implemented a divide and conquer type messaging style. So my partner, who is sworn, he would handle all the reactive messaging. He would handle all the, you know, the fatality, murder investigations, you know, anything of that nature. But he had me do a lot of the community policing initiatives, the stories that promoted the positive branding of the police department. all because of how engaged I was in the community, but also the relationship that we had already had established with the reporters. They were picking up those stories. And so it goes back to an ideal that Chief Dye had of building equity in the bank. So much like what we're doing right now with the hospital, of pushing out those stories about Minority Health Month, or, Mental Health Awareness Month. Here's the new technology that the hospital has. That stuff I was already doing at the police department. Here's new technology that a police department is doing to keep you safe. Thank you, taxpayers, for helping fund this, because with this, now your community is safer. Hey, we're having this huge event where your children can come learn about what it's like to be a police officer. Come to the library to both, check out a book and talk to a police officer. Get to know your. So you see what I mean?
Yep.
So you can do both and still build that relationship with the media and your community, instead of just always churning out the negative.
And I know departments they've really done both. It's lucky that in your department or your previous department, you had the ability to have a divide and conquer, where a lot of agencies, it's a single person and they're just, sometimes it's a juggling act for them to maintain that. And I know part of that is planning and kind of scheduling during slow times and getting things done when the crisis is not going on. And that is important. But I know, it's still difficult for some people, some of us, to plan ahead. And they've got to remember, they've got to think of these things, content calendars and having a schedule of things that are coming up 6 months down the line. So you can get those content, or I should say those contributors from the department, like the traffic guys. On every one of those holidays, there's always some kind of traffic safety message. That's who you want to have talk. Those are your subject matter experts. I mean, a lot of departments are, I don't know, they're afraid to like go and corner somebody and say, hey, I'm putting you on camera as our traffic safety expert. And I'm notorious for doing that. I would go grab our traffic guy and say, you're going on camera and you're talking about texting and driving. And he's like, I'm not doing that. And the next thing you know, I got him in front of the camera and he's doing it. And he did great. And I ended up getting a story out of two of the Metro Chicago stations, and my municipality, originally 30,000 people, 70 officers. I mean, you're not going to get TV time out of two news stations in 2 separate weeks, but I did it because I pushed the story out and he was hilarious on TV. So it worked very well. And of course, he ended up having to pay for ice cream for everybody in the department, because if you get on TV, you get ice cream. You have to get ice cream.
That's excellent.
Hey,
look, it's one of those things where, one of my personal motivations was I never wanted to put any of our officers on camera who were completely uncomfortable with it. I kind of had my go-tos, but if they were involved in a story that, hey, I would just have to have a conversation with them and be like, hey, look, that I'm not going to put you out on Front Street. That I would do this for you. But honestly, I can't do this story justice without you.
Right.
You have to be the one to explain what you did, how you saved that kid, how you saved that, Longhorn from crossing the street, not only from himself, but from, killing a member of our community. Only you can do that. And media isn't today what it was, 50, 60 years ago. And it's all about that challenge. It's all about building that relationship. It's all about building that trust 3 ways. The departments have to have that trust with the media. The media needs to be able to trust the department. The community needs to be able to trust both, because the job is to receive information that's trustworthy and unbiased, right?
Absolutely.
So, the more that, and that's a big part of the North Texas PIO group, is bringing those entities together. So, once or twice a year, we'll have a media mixer, and we'll bring our media partners in and just say, hey, how are things going? What's changing in your world? How can we, work better for you? Here's what we need from you guys in order to, elevate our presence or to get our story out faster. Gone, honestly, are the days where, truthfully, we rely on the media as our only source to get our information out there. Why? This big bad wolf or, big awesome thing, however you feel about social media, but it's social media. Police departments now have their own way of narrating their own story. They don't need that's why, we had to partner with media in the past, because a news conference was the only way to get information out there.
Right.
A story on the radio, a reporter coming to the station. I mean, that's still happening, but it's not as necessary because so many people are consuming their news and getting their information from a different way, and that's scrolling on their phones. So that's why it's important for police departments to, have a YouTube channel and have your chief talk about all the cool things that are going on. Or if there's a crisis situation, have your chief on there every single day giving videos about what's going on in the community, where it's safe, where it's unsafe, what they're doing to keep you safe, what they need from the community to calm things down.
Yep, I think it's so true that we need to make sure that we're putting those figureheads of the department or the agency out in front, because it certainly helps the general public see it and feel better that they know that at least somebody's listening. Where I'll give you a great example. When the shooting happened in Ferguson and the department was silent for 4.5 days, it opened up a void for anybody to talk, and it resulted, they didn't have any community relations to begin with, but it was even worse because they sat there for 4.5 days and said nothing. It ultimately for them, the void got filled by all the detractors of the department, and the community just went on the offensive against the department and the city government. So you can't hide when something bad happens, but you also have to be out there. I think you used the phrase putting it in the bank. You have to be out there during normal times all the time, because that puts it into the bank for the bad times.
So a way that I tried to explain it, and I love analogies. I'm a visual person. I'm right brain creative. It's the whole piece of the pie, right? So a piece of the pie is the fun, lighthearted stories. A piece of the pie is the educational information and what the police department is doing, either based on data and research or the new technology they got to help keep people safe. It's, hey, these are the bad guys and these are the drugs and guns we took off the street this week. Hey, here's something funny that is humanizing the badge. Hey, you see what I mean? Like if you just push out unicorns and rainbows all the time and you never talk about the bad stuff, either A, you're policing a city where there's like 1% crime, or you're not being really truthful and transparent about what's going on. And so people aren't really going to turn to you if they can't fully, completely trust that you're going to say what needs to be said in times of crisis, or when something's bad going on, or when you actually need help from the community, right?
Absolutely.
So that's why it's really important to just kind of always post things that are a little bit of everything that's going on. Because look, if you don't say anything about something that's going on, something else will. Someone else will. Just like you said about the Ferguson deal. If you allow someone else to narrate your story, then you no longer have control of the information that's being disseminated.
Let's talk real quickly about the change. Like, I think our listeners would really like to hear this. The difference between being a primary public sector person, how is the staffing within the hospital for media relations compared to where you were at the police department?
So we're a mighty team, and there's not that many of us doing the job. We have a director of communications. She's my director, and she's also our official PIO. And then I'm the media supervisor. So I report to her, she reports to someone else, and that someone else reports to the CEO of the hospital. And then I have two people who report to me. And so we're all one big team. So basically there's 4 of us handling external affairs. We also have a marketing department. Of course, that's all cohesive. But when it comes to media specialists and speaking with the media, there's 4 of us that do the job.
Okay. So not terribly large.
Mm-mm.
And you're handling the social and as well as that too. So, wow.
Yes, sir. So, and it a lot can be done with few people. And, we're a great team, and there's a lot of great ideas. There's a lot of great things that the people in the past have organized and set up, much to your point about a content calendar, scheduling. It's all incredibly organized. So we have, spreadsheets of story ideas that go back years. So that's something that we can, churn into something that's relevant for today. Uh, we're doing a lot of great things and have a lot of things planned for our social media for the future, because that's another place where, people are going to receive that information. We want to make sure that it's out there as much as possible.
And how many different platforms are you guys currently carrying right now?
We focus on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram and YouTube.
Okay, so I mean that's a decent amount of platforms. I mean, when you think about going to like Snapchat or TikTok, I mean, for a hospital that doesn't really kind of fit the role yet, it might.
So we are looking at, we've seen Cleveland Clinic and Mayo Clinic on TikTok doing some really wonderful things with that platform. That is an interesting place where 5-6 years ago, videos were not popular and not important. People didn't have the attention span. They didn't care. Now people are watching videos more than any other piece of content. And, it's one of those things where, TikTok obviously gained popularity because of, dancing and what have you. But as a receiver of TikTok and my friends, there's only one friend of mine that actually makes them. We, receive them and we scroll through, but the algorithm itself is starting to learn what I like. And so none of it's really dancing. A lot of it's like cool stuff that I learned that I can do around the house, life hacks, if you will. And now that I'm actually researching other hospitals, I'm actually seeing doctors who are on there, busting myths, like myth, this isn't healthy for you. Fact, here's how it can be healthy for you. Myth, if you take this medicine, this is going to happen. Fact, you don't really actually have to take this medicine. If you eat this and drink this,
Right.
You'll be fine. And what is that doing? That's humanizing healthcare. What could that do for a police department? That can humanize a police department when you've got the subject matter expert right there doing a quick video and showing people visually, oh, it's that easy? Like, oh, okay, cool. So we're looking into that space. We're not sure if we're going to be on it, but it's one of those things where I need to make sure that it makes sense as well. But I would say that I would not ever ignore new platforms that come up just based on what we think it's about. It's one of those things where you need to really dive into it and see if it's for you or how you can make it work for you.
Right. And it's interesting. So like Dallas PD has been on TikTok for quite a while now. And I watch what they put out, and they have some really neat stuff out there. And then of course there's the cringe TikTok, which is just brutal. But I still believe that there's a space for it, especially when you look at how the platform has taken over from YouTube because they've expanded the amount of time that you can show a video now too. So it really has potential. It's just, you have to be very careful with it as well.
And look, in my opinion, you make it work for you. You don't always have to utilize these platforms with how they're normally done. All TikTok honestly is just a way to share your information with the public.
Right.
And with that public audience probably being the younger generation, and police departments need people to work for them and need, recruitment, think about utilizing those platforms for recruitment purposes. You want to reach the audience that is using a certain platform to see what you're doing and what you're up to. If they happen to see a really cool officer that's, just explaining the job or, kind of showing some of the behind the scenes stuff,
right,
within reason, that could influence a person who wants justice, who wants to protect, who has that urge, but maybe didn't even think about policing. And then boom, they see a video and it's like, why didn't I think about that? That would be cool.
Exactly. So let's talk about the North Texas PIO group. What is your role in it, and what does the group do?
So my role with the North Texas PIO group, I'm the chairperson of the group. And so, my peers elected me to be in that role. And so we've got a chair, a vice chair, secretary, treasurer, and then 4 board members. So we're a pretty mighty group, and we're all from a different agency or organization. One of your questions, I saw how many agencies encompass the group. We have about more than 90 representatives of agencies in our group. So we're pretty big. And the group is an amazing resource for local communications professionals. It's one of those things where the bond that we have is unlike any other, because as you know, and as most of our listeners know, being a PIO, being a communication specialist, being a media specialist, sometimes you feel like you're on your own island, and it's hard to explain what you're doing, what your day was like to anyone who doesn't get it. And when I say it, I mean either communicating with media or herding cats within your own organization to communicate with the media, or just the job in and of itself. I mean, you're being asked to be a communication arm for your chief or for your CEO, or the words and visuals that you put out there is your responsibility, but it's about your organization. So when you come home after a day of that, you're just like, okay, I'm really proud of the work I did today, but man,
how do I explain everything I did?
like, you have an agenda, and that could be completely blown out because of a crisis situation, or you have an agenda, but so many other things happen where you're like, yeah, okay, I couldn't get to that today, but that's okay. That's okay. So the group itself, we all kind of get together and just vent about whatever. And usually there's always a solution at the end of that venting. Like, sometimes we just say things that we're complaining about, but then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, I've been dealing with that too, and here's what we discovered. So anytime we have a conversation, there's always support. And I think that is the key word that I would use to explain our organization. We're there for each other. We don't, if there's a crisis situation, there's no phone call that happens. We just show up.
Oh, that was going to be one of my questions, is does this group provide assistance? So
Absolutely.
And that's amazing. And that's awesome that there's an organization that can do that, because prior to up in Illinois, prior to probably 2015, there was no organization that did that. And myself and another PIO started an informal group, and we got people to commit to say, hey, we'll show up. And we've shown up at these incidents just because of the nature of what they were. We knew what was going to happen. They were overwhelmed and they needed assistance.
And being overwhelmed isn't always a bad thing. You know, it's got, the word itself has a negative connotation, but when a crisis does happen, yes, of course, you're going to be overwhelmed, because why? Your phone is ringing off the hook, both your personal, your work cell, and your office cell, while you're trying to write a news release, while you're trying to create a tweet for your chief to send out and then focus on the messaging from your own department, while you've got media actually at your doorstep, while you're also thinking about your own police family or your own, organization's family, the emotions that might come up. You're in a state of numbness because you're having to focus on all of these things. So your emotions aren't even in relevancy, if you will, until probably not even 2 to 3 days later, when you're able to actually take a breath and realize what you've just been through, what your department's been through. And so that's why it's nice when you've got this support system that isn't going to add to your stress by calling, hey, do you need something? Or texting, hey, do you need, they just show up. And so a lot of us, whenever we see tweets from, different things that have happened, just because of the person I am, I care for other people very deeply. And I'm not doing it because I'm the chair of the group. If I see something that I know required a lot of brain power, I check on them. I'm like, hey, saw what you went through today. Everything good? And they're usually either like really excited to talk about all the details, or they're just like, yeah, thanks for checking in on me. That's awesome. We're all okay here. Just another day at work. You know what I mean? So by building those relationships, both internally with your group, and then, checking on the media too, if you've got some colleagues in the media that, that's going to be rough on them too, because maybe just the content itself is just gnarly and disgusting. And you ask yourself how humans can do certain things to other human beings. If it doesn't hurt to reach out to that reporter and just be like, hey, given the circumstances of the story today, we thought you did a really good job, and thank you. Hopefully the next time we do a story, it can be something of lighter nature. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. You said earlier that you got together, you have a media day where you bring the media and you discuss things. Do you guys conduct trainings for membership too?
Yes, we do. In fact, are you familiar with Judy Powell?
Oh, absolutely.
So she, yeah. So Queen Bee of communication, right?
Absolutely.
She actually did a Q&A for us a few months ago and spent about 45 minutes on a virtual Q&A with our group. And so we asked our group ahead of time, hey, are there any questions, any issues you're dealing with? Please send them our way. And so we created a list of things to ask Judy about. And so she spent 45 minutes of her time. And so in doing so, we now, anytime she's in town, or wherever she is in the country, we'll share with our membership where her trainings are. But we provide training like that. Next week, we're actually, I think what the plan is we're going to have either a reporter or a former reporter kind of go through a checklist of how to set up and handle news conferences. So we're going to have
excellent.
a current PIO member speak with either PIO member who was a former reporter, or loop in a current reporter and just talk about both sides of the aisle. What PIOs need to do to make sure that a news conference is set up properly, talking points for your chief or your CEO, providing a proper exit for your chief or CEO so they're not going to be bombarded by the media. Everything down to the equipment needed. Is there a malt box there for your reporters to be able to plug in their cameras? And then on the reporter side, their expectations, their needs when they come, how they go through the questioning. So we make it valuable for membership because there's so many things that we go through, not just playing on social media all day or talking to a reporter. I mean, there's so many little intricacies, and so
Yep.
we like to share that with membership.
Outstanding. So what advice would you have for someone who wants to get into this field as a public information officer?
Drink lots of coffee. No, it's it's a wonderful field to get in, and something I never thought I would see myself doing. You have to be personable, you have to be engaging, you have to be strong, you've got to have tough skin, because there's going to be a lot of times where what the right thing to do is, and you sometimes have to ask yourself, is this the hill I want to die on today? And I say that because I think one of the most challenging things as a PIO that I've heard and experienced is sometimes they want to say nothing. Well, if we say nothing, the story will go away. Nope. If you say nothing, someone else is going to speak on your behalf, and it won't be anyone from your department or from your organization. Most times, right? So it's one of those things where if you have a gut feeling, or if you know what is true, you have to be able to say that and just know that that's your professional advice. It's not personal, but it's also a very fun job. I think the one thing I really, really, really enjoyed is the community engagement. Planning these big events with our officers who truly have a heart for people and just want to influence for good, right? They want to go and read books to kids. They want to go ride bikes with them. They want to just be in the community and get to know those people and maybe change a mind or two. I didn't realize how philanthropic being a PIO can be. And maybe that's just with our department, but I got really involved with the community just myself by being a representative of the police department. And I love that because the community would then say, hey, we want to partner with the police department to do this. Well, our police department may not have known that had we not gone to this event and made that connection. So you're out there a lot. I mean, just don't think that it's a desk job. You get to experience and meet a lot of great people, and you gain a lot of insight on leadership as well. I mean, when you spend that much time with the chief of police, going with them to events, taking quotes, taking pictures, getting them prepared for a major event, having them rely on you for communication purposes, that grows you, or that helps you grow as a professional and as a person, because you're getting an inside view of what they have to deal with and you're supporting them with messaging, because at the end of the day, you are an arm of communication of your chief or CEO. So the words you say and you craft are very important.
I like that. And we're going to lighten it up a little bit and go to some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Favorite activity to do?
Ooh, recently it's paddleboarding.
Nice.
We're having a
Chocolate?
good time doing that.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Cappuccino chunky chocolate.
Oh, different. Okay,
A
nice.
coffee flavored chocolate.
There you go. And as a PIO, that's perfect. What is a must-read book in your mind?
Ooh. I would say either Gone Girl or The Great Gatsby.
Oh, interesting.
I love both of those books.
If you could have coffee with a historic figure, living or dead, who would you choose?
Princess Diana.
That would be a good interview. Yes, that would be good. Favorite drink of choice?
I would have to say she wakes up with coffee and ends the day with a glass of wine.
That's excellent. I like that.
Not all the time.
That's
but
okay. That's okay. I totally get it. What would be your superpower if you could get one?
That's a good one. I didn't think about that question prior to this podcast. I know it sounds cliche, but I think being able to fly would be super cool, mainly because traffic in the DFW area is atrocious, but also for the cool views.
It would be nice to have a bird's eye view on things sometimes. Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I was just watching, I had music playing in my living room yesterday on YouTube, and the videos that they play just in the background when it's not like an MTV style, they just use drones for everything. So you get to see the Antigua Islands and Cancun from a different perspective, all because they're flying a drone for 30 minutes and they attach it to music and you're like, oh, this is really cool.
I like that. Nice. All right. Final thoughts. Anything you'd like to add, Chelsea?
I would just say, understand that, you're not married to your job and your job isn't married to you. So it gets incredibly difficult sometimes when you're so in the weeds on certain things. So take pride and be happy when things are going really well. And, just take a mental note of how that feels, because the job itself can be difficult, but it can also be really fun and really rewarding. And, lean on your peers, check on them, make sure they're doing okay. And just try to have some fun with it, because you're in a very unique position to, brand the department in a certain way. And it can be a lot of fun.
I couldn't agree more with that. Chelsea, how can people best reach out to you if they want to connect or learn more about you?
I would say probably the best way is either LinkedIn or Twitter.
Okay.
LinkedIn is a great resource to connect with people across the country professionally. And, I'm on Twitter.
I will add both of those into the show notes.
Okay.
Chelsea, thank you for coming on the show. And that's Chelsea Kretz, who is the media supervisor for Parkland Hospital. Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified of the latest episode. If you are listening on a platform that allows reviews, please give us a review. We appreciate any review, good or bad. It helps us improve on each episode. Until next time, be safe.